Oh. Wait, you're all on one side. Oh. Oh my goodness me. I've not really done this kind of thing before.
We normally do, Tony's downstairs. We've been doing the meditation. Now we go to Chester.
Oh yeah.
We've been doing that through Zoom on a Thursday night.
Okay. So that
it's fun. You see everybody. You just see like 6 screens, and whoever comes on, you see them there. But is it in her house? Is everybody? Is she got somebody in her house giving class?
I haven't got. Well, Dayananda Maharaj wants to do it. Oh, where have you gone? Oh. 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 Isn't it strange? It's nice to see you though.
I don't mind seeing you, but I was like, oh well, my God.
I've got it open. And,
oh yeah.
And I mean, I don't know how it works. I've just made an account. I've put the code in. I logged in with the code, so I guess we just need to wait for them to become live. Is that right?
Yeah. You just wait, and then, well, where are they having it? Are they in Harida's house?
I don't know.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Please accept my obeisances. All glory to Srila Prabhupada.
Aye. Always Prabhupada.
Are you well?
Yeah, so far so good.
That's good. You know, all we can do is to depend upon Krishna. You know, so
yeah. Anyway, what we'll do, I'll just do a little kirtan for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Come in, and then we can start. We'll just do an hour.
Sure.
I think that's long enough in an evening. Otherwise, it gets a bit. Anyway, yeah. We can see what devotees think.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. So we'll just do 5 minutes kirtan and then.
Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari.
Just turn your microphones off and then just Otherwise, it'll just create a whole noise on the system. Okay.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, everybody.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Haribo, Hare Krishna.
Okay, welcome everybody. Just for the introduction, Yes. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo
Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om
Om Namo Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om
Namo
Namo Bhagavate
Vasudevaya.
Vasudevaya.
So just one thing, you have to keep I can mute your microphones, but it's better if you keep all your microphones muted. And I just have mine unmuted so I can speak. And if there's any questions, then you can unmute and ask the question, because if you have more than 2 microphones unmuted, then it creates interference on the whole system. And so when we're singing also, especially if you have your microphones muted, and otherwise it's just a lot of interference, that's all you hear. Okay. So I just plan to do an hour, because I think in the evenings, most devotees will be satisfied with that. We do more. I can do a bit more if you want, but it's some, it's the end of the day, and usually it's not so easy to concentrate as in the morning. But we can, take it as it goes and see what devotees feel comfortable with. So we're going to do an overview on the Srimad Bhagavatam. And, there are different kinds of overviews. Some are very quick, and some are more focused on, on different parts of the Bhagavatam. But we'll try and find a medium which is, not too slow, but also we don't skimp over too many things. Because when we read Srimad Bhagavatam, I suppose you've all noticed that we tend to get lost in Prabhupada's purports, and we lose the thread of the Bhagavatam. And we can read it many, many times like that, and not really, we understand the philosophy, but it's not sort of in a progressive way, and we don't see the gradual build-up of the Bhagavatam. It seems haphazard. If we read the translations alone, then we start to get more, an idea. But we won't be reading all the translations. I'll be just going through, speaking about a particular chapter and section by section, then going on to the next chapter like that. And we'll have time for questions as well. Just so we can see the flow of the Bhagavatam more than anything. And there'll be also some basic philosophy there as well, some understanding of the importance of certain sections of the Bhagavatam. Okay. There is a prayer actually at the beginning of the Srimad Bhagavatam. I forget the name. It's by Sanatana Goswami, who was known as being the biggest scholar of the Srimad Bhagavatam. But it's just one prayer which we have here. There's about 4 different prayers, and we used to recite it regularly. And we used to do the Bhagavatam study in Vrindavan. But I'll just recite the Sanskrit. It's from the Krishna Stava Leela by Sanatana Goswami. Madeka Bando Mad Sangin, Mad Guru Mad Mahadana, Man Nistaraka Mad Bhagya, Madananda Namostute. O Srimad Bhagavatam, O my only friend, O my companion, O my teacher, O my great wealth, O my deliverer, O my good fortune, O my bliss, I offer my respectful obeisance unto you. So this is Sanatana Goswami's feeling about the Srimad Bhagavatam. In other words, it's his life and soul. So I'll just start with the general. So in the Srimad Bhagavatam, this is the natural commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. The Vedanta Sutra, Veda means knowledge, and Anta means the end of knowledge, and Sutra means very short couplets which explain the end of all knowledge. But this wasn't understandable by the general mass of people. And so we'll read later how Vyasadeva translated, or he commented on his own Vedanta Sutra. So therefore it's called the natural commentary. Somebody who writes something and then comments on it, he naturally understands it better than anybody else because he's the one who wrote it anyway. And so, Vyasadeva writes, he wrote the Srimad Bhagavatam for the benefit of everybody, not just the learned Brahmins. They would be the only ones who would properly understand Srimad Bhagavatam, or understand Vedanta Sutra, sorry. So Bhagavatam is meant for everybody. And so the Bhagavatam, it's in 12 cantos, except for the 10th canto, all the other cantos are meant to bring us to the understanding of the 10th canto, which is all about the Supreme Personality of God, Krishna. And so it's like our own body. The first two cantos, that's canto 1 and canto 2, are like the 2 feet of the Lord. And then it builds up like that until we come to the head of the Lord, which is the smiling face of the Lord, which is the 10th canto. And then from there we go on to the top of the head, which is eventually the 12th canto. But we're dealing with the first 2 cantos to start with, and and the 3rd canto as well, specifically. First 2 cantos of the Lord's Lotus Feet. And in the first canto, the first 3 chapters are specifically establishing the absolute truth of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So there are actually 10 subjects of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Huawei smartphone, that's I don't know who Huawei smartphone is, but your microphone is not muted. And also Mick Thomas, his microphone's not muted. Katie Baker and Barbara. So if you can mute your microphones, then it'll be easier. We'll not get interference then. Okay?
Very technical way to do it.
Okay. So in the 2nd canto, it starts to talk in the 10th chapter about 10 Bhagavatam. So I'll just explain those 10 subjects. It says, Atra Sarga Visargascha Sanam Posham Uttayaha Manvantar Eshunakranta Nirado Mukti Ashrayaha. So that is, the first is creation. That's the first subject, and that's by Mahavishnu. Then that's what Sarga. Visarga is a secondary creation, and that's by Lord Brahma, or subcreation. Third is the planetary systems, Sthanam. 4th is the protection of the Lord, Poshanam. The creative impetus, Uttayaha. The 6th one is Manvantaras. Yeah? Manvantaras, the different manus who appear in this world. And then the 7th is the science of God. This is Nirodha. Mukti is the 8th, returning back to God. And Ashrayaha, the last one, is the Sambhavanam of Krishna. So these are the 10 subjects of Srimad Bhagavatam. And some commentators, they will say that these are progressive. The first two, the first two cantos deal with the creation and the subcreation, like that. And then this is also a fact, actually, that different cantos progressively deal with these progressive different objects or subjects of the Srimad Bhagavatam. But it's not just like that. It's very difficult for you to isolate it that way. There are all the subjects of the Srimad Bhagavatam are in all the cantos, but there's specific emphasis on certain points which make it progressive also. So we shouldn't become too bothered about that. We shouldn't go looking for, which canto is dealing with liberation, which canto is dealing with this, which canto. It's dealing specifically with that to some degree, but it's dealing with all the other things also. So you may get asked that question. Okay. And then some scholars, they say that some scholars argue that the first two cantos are not part of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and for the following reasons. That the first canto, Shukadeva Goswami speaks, he's only speaking from the second canto onwards. So that's when it actually begins. And another argument is that the second canto is not part of the Srimad Bhagavatam, because Shukadeva Goswami, when he does speak, is laying down the definitions of the Bhagavatam, like these 10 subjects. But the Bhagavatam really starts in the third canto. But actually, that's not a fact. We've just said all the subject matters are in all the cantos. So the Srimad Bhagavatam starts with the first canto. Okay, now we can start talking about the Srimad Bhagavatam. You start reading the Bhagavatam. So in the first 3 verses of the first chapter of the first canto, the beginning of the Srimad Bhagavatam, these are like the preface or the prelude to the whole Bhagavatam. And the first one is talking about the summum bonum, the absolute truth. When you're going to start reading about a particular topic, you establish the topic first, what you're trying to explain. And so the topic is about Krishna. So we'll find in the first verse, it tells us all about the qualification that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay? And then, what is the qualification of the book we're reading from? This is the Srimad Bhagavatam. So the second text starts talking about what's the qualification of the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's free from all envy. It's free from any material subject matter. And therefore it's established as the highest. It's completely, only subject matter is about Lord Krishna. And then the third verse, it speaks about how this knowledge is coming. Where did the Bhagavatam get, how did the Bhagavatam arrive? Nigama kalpatara galitam phalam, sukha abrina amrita dravya samyutam. It's saying that this nectarine fruit is coming from Lord Krishna. It's spoken originally by Lord Krishna through Lord Brahma. And here we have Sukadeva Goswami speaking it. And Sukadeva Goswami, Sukha means what? It means parrot. Sukha means parrot. So Sukadeva Goswami is like a parrot. In India, they say if you want to get the sweetest fruit, find that fruit or find that mango. The sweetest mango is the one where the parrots chewed it or he pecked his beak. So it says that when this Bhagavatam is spoken by Shukadeva Goswami, it becomes sweeter, although the fruit was already sweet. So why? Why does it become sweeter? Because it's become one thing. when somebody's realised and they explain something, then we understand it better in that way. And not only that, it becomes suitable for all classes of people at that particular time, place and circumstance. We speak according to time, place and circumstance to different people according to their particular ability for understanding. So it becomes more relevant to more people, and therefore it becomes even increased in sweetness. So these are establishing the absolute truth, Krishna, the Srimad Bhagavatam as the Amala Purana, free from all material contamination, all free from all cheating religion. And then the third one is the process of disciplic succession, how this knowledge is passed down, like a mango is passed down from a tree very carefully. And therefore, if it's passed down carefully, it's in one piece when we get it on the floor. So that's the process. So it starts in earnest where, it describes a description at Naimisharanya where the sages had gathered for 1,000-year sacrifice. Because they were omniscient, they could see the age of Kali coming and the people would be very disturbed. And they wouldn't be able to, practice spiritual life. And so they asked Suta Goswami to be their leader to speak Srimad Bhagavatam. And so Suta Goswami was present when Shukadeva Goswami spoke Bhagavatam on the banks of the Ganges to the Maharaj Parikshit when he was cursed to die within 7 days. He heard with rapt attention, this was his qualification. And he was submissive. And they glorified him with all these prayers. So in this part of the Bhagavatam, from text 4 to text 6, I think it is, or text 8, it's saying how we should approach Bhagavatam the way that the sages at Naimisharanya did. And now the speaker should be qualified like, or try to be qualified like Sukadeva Goswami or Suta Goswami. Of course, then there are 6 main questions that are asked by the sages. They start after glorifying the speaker and seeing that it's coming in cyclic succession, and they start to ask him questions. So there are 6 questions, and this is in, if you have your Bhagavatams you can read through, but in text number 9 is the first question. And it said, what is the ultimate good for everybody in this age of Kali? What is the ultimate good? And that's answered later in the 2nd chapter. We'll come to that later. Then the second question is, what is the essence of all scripture? What is the ultimate good for everybody? What is the essence of all scripture? That will be answered also in that same section. Question 3 is, that's text 11. Question 3 is in text 12 of the 1st chapter. What is the purpose of Krishna's appearance in this world? Why does he appear? So that will be answered. And then question 4 is in text 17. Why did Krishna appear? Tell us about Krishna's appearance as incarnations in this world. So, and the next one is text 18, which has a similar, it's more or less the same question, or it appears to be. And so the Acharyas explain that the first one is talking about the Purusha avatars. So the Purusha avatars are Karanadakashaya Vishnu, Garbhodakashaya Vishnu, and Kshirodakashaya Vishnu, the 3 Vishnus. Karanadakashaya Vishnu creates the whole material creation, provides the ingredients. Garbhodakashaya Vishnu enters into each universe and provides the ingredients. And then from the expansion of Garbhodakashaya Vishnu comes Kshirodakashaya Vishnu as the super soul. And he enters into everything to animate it. He enters into this body as our friend. He enters into the atoms to keep the atoms working. It's like the Christians said, the Holy Ghost. This is a rough example. The Holy Ghost is everywhere. So we'll hear about the super soul later. So these are the These are the three incarnations. Then the second, when it's talking about more incarnations, it's talking about the Leela avatars. So these will be described also in the 3rd chapter. Both these types of incarnation described in the 3rd chapter. And that's where there's a list of all the Leela avatars. And finally, question 6 is, where do we go for shelter in this age of Kali? Lord Krishna's left this world, he's gone back to his abode. How do we follow proper religious principles? So that's the 6th question. Okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. And what text is that last question, 6th question?
21, I think. Just a minute. 23.
Thank you, Maharaj.
So this is like the 1st chapter in a nutshell. And when it asks about, when it asks question, the very next verse is a famous verse. It tells about the qualities of the people of this age of Kali. That's text 10. And so therefore, they ask another question in the 11th verse to explain the essence of all the scriptures for the good of all living entities. In other words, people are so fallen that they have to be given the essence. Don't waste time. I just had to explain that to you. So that's the 1st chapter, more or less, in a nutshell. Setting these position of the Lord Krishna, the Bhagavatam, the disciplic succession, the process of approaching this knowledge, the process of being qualified to speak the knowledge, and then the questions by the sages. So then we start with the 2nd chapter, which is called Divinity and Divine Service. The first one is called Questions by the Sages. The 2nd chapter is called Divinity and Divine Service. So in this, they start to glorify. Suta Goswami now begins to speak. So just like the sages glorified him, he will now glorify Shukadeva Goswami, who was his spiritual master, who he heard the Bhagavatam from. And then after glorifying Shukadeva Goswami in the first 3 verses of the 2nd chapter, then he starts to offer respects to the sages before Shukadeva Goswami. Going back to Vyasadeva. And then he congratulates the sages for asking such nice questions. You know, if we want to get the benefit of a holy person, is to ask him reasonable questions. Good question. No, you know, what's that on your nose? You know, a question like that is not so intelligent. But you know, we ask more philosophical questions. So Suta Goswami then starts to answer after the first 5 verses. The 6th verse is very important. Savai pumsham paradharmo yato bhaktir adopti haitaki apratyata yayatma suprasidati. So that supreme occupation, this is the first question. Right, remember what's the first question? What's the ultimate good for everybody? So he starts trying to answer that that supreme occupation is by which men can attain to transcendental, unmotivated, uninterrupted, loving service to the Supreme Lord. So in other words, any occupation that brings us to the point of devotional service, that's the best occupation, he's saying. And then take 7, Vasudeva, he says, Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita, Jnanatyasa Vairagyam Jnanachayat Ahaitakam. So, by rendering devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one immediately gets causeless knowledge, and by that causeless knowledge we become detached from this world and attached to the Supreme Lord. So this is the answer to the second question. So, what was the second question? Anybody remember? What is-
Essence of all the scriptures, Maharaj.
Yeah, and that's bhakti. That which leads us to devotional service is the best occupation, and bhakti is the best occupation. So this will be explained now from text 8 all the way through to text 15, and then from text 16 through to text 23, we'll explain about the process of devotional service. So we first, from text 8, we're talking to people in general. And we can go through these. I'll go through these verses one by one. Tamaspanushtitapum sabhiksas kena kata tatasuya notpayat yadivadin shrama evi ikevlam. The occupational activities that a man performs according to his own position are only so much useless labour if they do not give attraction for the personality of God. Same thing repeated. Text 9. It says all occupational activities are meant for ultimate liberation. Text 10. Life desires should be centred around self-realisation. One should desire a healthy life, or a life of self-preservation. We should preserve this body for self-realization. And then 11 talks about the absolute truth in 3 phases. What is the nature of that we're trying to achieve? Brahmati, Paramatmati, Bhagavaniti Shamsi, Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. And then text 12, it talks about Tatshradana Munayo, that if we're serious, the seriously inquisitive sage realizes the absolute truth by rendering devotional service according to what is heard in Vedanta. Thus he realizes the absolute truth. Then 13, it goes into the Varnashram system, that Krishna is pleased by our activities according to our natural propensity. And finally, next but one is that there's therefore understanding this philosophy, then we should constantly hear about, remember, and glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So actually in this section, right through to text 23, the whole process of devotion, if a person just reads that and understands it, and learns that section, he can understand the process of devotional service. And then in text 15, it says this process cuts a knot of attachment to this material world. Now it changes. It changes from just preaching to people in order to get them to take up devotional service and use their life in that way, to somebody who's now practicing devotional service. And what is the first thing? Association of a devotee. So it says that by rendering devotional service to those devotees who are free from all vice, all material attachment, then that's the best service. And by that service, by serving devotees, we get an affinity for hearing about Krishna. Our natural proclivity is to love Krishna. And so when we serve, we start to purify the heart. We show Krishna we're serious. And so then the next verse says that Krishna then purifies the heart enough so that we feel inclined to hear about him. So that inclination to hear about Krishna is the real qualification for devotional service. That's why we perform service, to purify the heart so we can hear about him. And that disinclination means that we have work to do. Because when we actually get that inclination by Krishna's mercy, Sparkata Krishna, Punya Shravana Kirtana, Viryanta Avajrani, Vidanotis Ritsatam, that then, from within the heart, cleanses the heart of all material attachment. All material attachment will become cleansed, will become completely fixed in devotional service. And how do we become fixed? That we hear regularly. The next verse is a very famous verse. It's called Nasta Prayeshu Abhadreshu. Regularly hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, all there is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. Almost. Why almost? When it's almost completely destroyed, then loving service under the Transcendental Lord is established as an irrevocable fact. What's that irrevocable fact? It means irrevocable means that we become fixed in devotional service because we've cleansed the heart of all the desires to enjoy this world. It's called Nishta, platform Nishta. So we started with text 16. This deals with Shraddha, initial faith to hear, and then Sadhu Sangha, we associate with devotees, and then we start to perform devotional service. And in 17, the service goes on, and the heart becomes cleansed and heart nivritti. And in text 18, as the heart becomes cleansed, then Nishta, we become fixed in devotional service. Okay. And then 19, text 19, says when we become fixed, then we become fixed in what they call the mode of goodness. Then these modes of hankering for material enjoyment, hankering, mode of ignorance, and karma, desire for material enjoyment, mode of passion, they're actually cleansed away. So when they're cleansed away completely, then we develop a taste. All of a sudden, we're all getting a taste to some degree as we practice. Practice, an ongoing process, the more the heart becomes cleansed and the more taste we get. So Prabhupada told us, he gave us the formula for success. He said, practice this process for the rest of this life. Because if we do, and we do it properly, the heart is bound to become purified. And then our devotion will become fixed, we'll get a taste, ruchi, and we'll become attached to the process. Being attached to the process, we'll become attached to Krishna. When we become attached to Krishna, we'll start to feel the emotion, bhava. And then by that taste, we carry on performing devotional service effortlessly. And as the heart becomes more purified, eventually we get prema, pure love for God. So, it may seem like a long way. A lot of the time we're going through the anartha nivritti stage. Clearing the heart. But just like this disease, or is it COVID-19? I think everybody's aware of COVID-19. Disease COVID-19. It started off very slowly. You've seen that curve, what they're all talking about, where it starts off and it just gradually builds up. Then at some point, it just goes exponential, it shoots up. So this is when we actually get a taste for devotional service. And that taste can't be overcome. The process starts to accelerate. So we should be patient. We should be patient and practice this, Vaidhi sadhana bhakti on a regular basis. And of course, then we come to the purified mode of goodness. It says that evam prasanna manaso bhagavad bhakti yogata bhagavad tattva vijnana mukta sangha sujayate, that we become enlivened. When we perform devotional service, we feel ecstasy. So this is a platform of bhava and prema. So, within those, from verse 16 to verse 20, the whole process of devotional service And the 9 different levels are actually explained. And then, of course, we come to 21, which says at that point, there's no more any attraction to this material world. The knot in the heart is cut, our attachment to the material world. Okay, so now the last part of the second chapter, this deals with actually, text 22 says that if we're in doubt about this process, it says that all transcendentalists have been practicing this process in time immemorial, because such devotional service is enlivening to the self. Many, many people achieve success through this process. So there's some encouragement there that it's not that only a few people achieve success. Many, many people achieve success by this process. Okay. So then from text 23 to 29, text 23 to 29, we're starting to deal about that only Lord Krishna should be worshipped. So, you know, many people are baffled about, especially in India, people are baffled about what they should worship. Should we worship the demigods? Should we worship Lord Shiva? Should we worship Mahavishnu? Should we worship this Vishnu, that? There's different Vishnus. You know, should we worship Varahadev? Any others? Should we worship Nrsimhadev? So, you know, we find on a lot of altars, they've got, just make sure they get the right personality. They have many different personalities to worship. So here it's starting to, now we know the process. Now we've got the paraphernalia for worshipping. Who should we worship? Who is the supreme personality of Godhead? So then it starts talking about these 3 Vishnus again. And the Guna avatars. It talks about Lord Shiva. It talks about Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma is in the, you know, a creator in the mode of passion. Lord Shiva is a creator in the mode of ignorance. And Lord Vishnu, the 3 Guna avatars, are actually in the mode of goodness. So it gives the example, just like, you know, there's raw wood. Raw wood is like the mode of ignorance. You can't do much with it. When wood starts to smoke, because it's starting to catch light, this is like the mode of passion. But when the wood becomes a blaze, this is like the mode of goodness. You know, you can't do much with it with raw wood. You can't cook a feast with raw wood. You know, you can try to cook a feast when the wood's smouldering, but I don't think you'll be very successful. But once the wood's actually blazing, then you can do something with it. So it says we should aspire to come to the mode of goodness. And mode of goodness means worshipping, at this point it says Lord Vishnu. And therefore we should, next section says reject the worship of the demigods. And because, you know, text 28 and 29 explain Vasudeva para Veda, Vasudeva para Maha, Vasudeva para Yoga, Vasudeva para Kriya, Vasudeva param Jnanam, Vasudeva param Tapa, Vasudeva param Dharma, Vasudeva paragatihi. You know that Krishna is the object of the Veda, the object of all sacrifices. Yogas for realizing him. Fruitive activities are rewarded by him. In other words, everything's supplied by Krishna, so he should be worshipped. And then text 30 to 33. He talks about these 3, Purusha avatars, Mahavishnu, which I've already spoken about, Garbhodakashaya Vishnu and Kshirodakashaya Vishnu. And it says Kshirodakashaya Vishnu is known as Rishikesh. Like in Bhagavad Gita, it says, Krishna calls Arjuna Arjuna calls Krishna Rishikesh, master of the senses. He's the one who's fulfilling our desires to enjoy this material world, the super soul. Then, answer to question 3. Can anybody remember what question 3 was? Why does Krishna appear in this world? This is answered in text 34 of the 2nd chapter. Would somebody like to read it? You see, this is like a one-way transition. We can amend this program according to devotees' desires, because I'm going through it in sort of a parrot fashion way, explaining very briefly the overview of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So you have to remember that it's not an in-depth study. So in that way, you have to be patient. There will be time for questions as well, obviously. But if devotees find they would like a different forum for going through Bhagavatam, we can consider that also. So let's find Barbara. You're the first one on the list. Would you like to read? Have you got Srimad Bhagavatam? If you've got it handy, if you don't have it handy, don't worry.
Can I read, Maharaj?
She's just gone for it.
Okay.
Okay, you can read if you want.
Okay. Hare Krishna, Maharaj.
It's text 34.
Text 34. Translation. Thus the Lord of the universes maintains all planets inhabited by demigods, men, and lower animals, assuming the roles of incarnation. He performs pastime to reclaim those in the mode of pure goodness.
So So Lord Krishna appears to reclaim those in the mode of, it's just been talking about coming to the mode of goodness all the way through, performing activities which raise us to a state of living where we understand things properly. And then Krishna can reclaim that condition. Krishna can reclaim that conditioned soul. It comes to reclaim the conditioned souls, that's it. But if we get to the mode of goodness, then we can practice devotional service. Okay? And that's the last verse of the 2nd chapter. So we have 10 minutes left. I wanted to cover chapter 3 as well because shall we do that? Or would you like to ask questions on the first 2 chapters? Because if we cover chapter 3, we'll cover a particular section.
Yes, Maharaj.
Yeah?
We should do it.
Okay.
Maharaj, we've got the Manchester program starting in 10 minutes as well, you know.
Anyway, I'm not bothered about that. You know, it's like...
I think you're presenting, isn't it?
You know, you can always go to the Manchester program. It's not a problem.
I thought you were doing it as well.
No. I was this morning, I was doing Srimad Bhagavatam on Ram. But anyway, we'll just carry on with this. Anyway, for the first 10 minutes, they'll be doing the Jayavada Madhava, so we're all right. Krishna is the source of all incarnations. This is the title of the 3rd chapter. Like I said at the beginning, we're coming back to first from chapter 1, from verse 1 to 5, it talks about the 3 Vishnus again. We've already spoke about that. Then from text 6 to text 29, this is where it talks about the Leela avatars. And it starts, which is the first Leela avatar. Anybody know? Kumaras. Kumaras. Four Kumaras. I got them written down actually. Save time. We don't have to all anyway. These are all the incarnation of the Lord and perform particular pastimes which we'll read about throughout the Srimad Bhagavatam. The four Kumaras, Narada Muni, Parashuram, Krishna Balaram, Kalki is the last one, like that. Lord Ramachandra, who we are talking about today. So they come into this world and they perform activities to attract the conditioned souls. That's a Leela avatar. And like Nrsimha Devi is Leela avatar, but the Purusha avatars are in charge of the creation and maintenance of the material world. And then when it gets to all these avatars, because it's text 27, it says, all the rishis, manus, demigods, and descendants of Manu who are especially powerful are portions of the plenary portions of the Lord. This includes the Prajapatis. So everybody is next to the Lord, all these different incarnations. But it says in the next verse, this is called the Emperor verse of the whole Bhagavatam. Ete chamsa kala pumsa, Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam, Vyoklam Lokam, Mridvayanti Yuge Yuge. So listen carefully. All the above mentioned incarnations are either plenary portions or portions of the plenary portions of the Lord. But Lord Sri Krishna is the original personality of Godhead. All of them appear on planets when there is a disturbance created by the atheists. The Lord incarnates to protect the theists. So all these different incarnations are expansions of the original personality of Godhead. Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam, but Krishna is the original personality of Godhead. And so it establishes that. And why is it called the Emperor verse? Because when we go through the Srimad Bhagavatam, sometimes the pastimes are relating to Lord Vishnu as the personality of Godhead. Sometimes the position of Lord Shiva is supreme. Sometimes it says things which are a little bit, we don't properly understand and we become confused. But if we're in confusion about it, we can always come to this verse and think and say that, you know, this is actually the Emperor verse. This is actually the conclusion of all the other verses. So all situations, Krishna remains the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This verse is very minutely gone into detail by Srila Jiva Goswami from every angle of vision, just to emphasize this point. So we're going through a lot of stuff here. You know, establishing Krishna's position, establishing the Bhagavatam, establishing the simplistic succession, establish the process of knowledge, transference of knowledge, starting to answer the questions, the initial questions that the sages ask, explaining the overall process of devotional service. It's all there. Explaining the difference between the creates this world, how he comes into this world and performs pastimes, and ultimately that all this is happening by Krishna's mercy. Everything's coming from Krishna. This is what we have to sort. And then he talks about something we spoke about in the Bhagavad Gita, about the imaginary form of the Lord, the universal form. That, you know, and just like we have mind, body, mind, intelligence, so there's also a subtle cause for this creation. It isn't just the cause that we can see, but there's a subtle cause behind it. And that subtle cause is represented in the universal form, which is a form that we can see. That subtle cause is the Supreme Lord. So we shouldn't take this material world as the final cause. This is what the next few verses are saying. These are all dealing with the gross body and subtle mind and intelligence. So we've got this verse in text 33 says, whenever a person experiences by self-realization that both the gross and subtle bodies have nothing to do with the pure self, at that time he sees himself as well as the Lord. Just one more thing on these incarnations. Some of them are direct incarnations of the Lord. Shakti Avesh, that means are directly empowered. They're given a specific particular duty. And some of them are called vibhutis. These are like the rishis, manus, demigods, descendants of Manu, the Prajapati. So there's different grades of included in the list of incarnations. Okay, so so now, after explaining all this, it comes back to the Supreme Lord. He says that, you know, that in verse 37, it says, the unintelligent cannot understand the Lord's activities. So then it starts to explain about Lord Krishna again. And verse 40 is a very famous verse. Ramasamitam Uttama Sloka Charitam Chakra Bhagavanti Nishrayasya Lokasya Pranam Svastyayanam Smahat. The Srimad Bhagavatam is a literary incarnation of God, and it is compiled by Srila Vyasadeva, the incarnation of God. It is meant for the ultimate good of all people, all successful, all blissful, and all perfect. So it's glorifying the Bhagavatam again. And then it said that in the next one, it says, Srila Vyasadeva delivered this to his son, Shukadeva Goswami. And it's called the cream of all Vedic literatures. The cream is the best. Like on milk, the best part of the milk is the cream. And Shukadeva Goswami in text 42 said he delivered it to Maharaj Parikshit on the banks of the Ganges. And then in text 43 we've got the answer. We've got the answer to the next question. Question 6. Krishna Svadama Bhagate Jnana Jnana Kalo Nasta Vishtam Esha Purana Pranadoditaha. What does this say? It says that this Bhagavat, what's that question? Where have religious principles gone now the Supreme Personality of Godhead has left for his own abode, accompanied with knowledge, religion, etc.? And so the answer is in Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam is none different from Krishna. This Bhagavata Parama is as brilliant as the sun, and it has arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode, accompanied by knowledge, religion, etc. Persons who have lost their vision to the dense darkness of the age of Kali will get light from this Parama. All learned Brahmins, when Shukadeva Goswami recited Bhagavatam in the presence of Maharaj Krishna, I heard him with rapt attention. And thus, by his mercy, I learned the Bhagavatam from that great, powerful sage. Now I shall try to make you hear that very same thing as I learned it from him, as I have realized So now, in the next week, we'll start from chapter 4, where Suta Goswami is going to carry on speaking. Okay, so that's bang on 8 o'clock, going to 6 o'clock. Any feedback about this type of presentation?
I think it's excellent, actually, Maharaj. If we actually read if we know next week we have to read 3 chapters, we would actually read it and get some idea about it ourselves. And then when you go through it, it reinforces our learning. So I think it's really good. Maybe for someone who's not read it before, it's going very quickly. But at the same time, I think, as you said, it is not an in-depth study. It is going over it more like an overview of the Bhagavatam rather than an in-depth study. So I would say it was really good. I enjoyed it very much.
Okay, yeah. So that's a good point. That if we read, I was going to actually send a note out to read it, but that's up to the individual. It's not that you have to read these 3 chapters or the next 4, 5, 6 chapters.
The question I would ask you is that today's lecture, will it be possible to hear it again?
Yeah, there'll be a recording, so I can.
Recording. Just because I think I'd like to, because I hadn't read it before, I didn't know what to expect. I would like to hear the lecture again, especially all the questions, and kind of make a mark that, and then I would remember it. And I'm enjoying it. So I liked it very much. Thank you, Maharaj.
So, Jaya Krishna's there. I don't know how he'll feel about that. But we've got most of it, a lot of the devotees we already send out to. But we'd have to make a bit, if everybody wanted a copy. I mean, it's not necessary that you all will, but what I suggest you do if you want to get recordings is that you contact Jai Krishna and give him your email address. And then he can put them all together and just with one press of a button send a recording out to everybody. Okay.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Probably all of Jai Krishna's email address. So, what to do?
So Maharaj, what chapters do we plan to cover next week?
I haven't worked that out yet. I don't know what speed I'll be going at next week. I'm doing it a stage at a time. But if if you read a few chapters, you can't go around. It will help. Even my advice is that if you only read the translations,
yes,
then you will get a good idea of the flow of the Bhagavatam. And you make little notes about things which are not so clear, and then maybe these things can be cleared up. Because one obstacle in reading Bhagavatam is that it's not it doesn't seem to be progressive like an ordinary book. We like a storyline, and it's good to actually get the storyline, and then it's easier to understand the philosophy. The whole Vedic literature is like that. The Mahabharata is like that. So it does help if we actually read through the translations, and then we can go back and read through the reports as well if we really want to study it as well. But I suggest everybody at least read through the translations for the next 4 chapters, 4 or 5 chapters. It'll only take an hour or so, and make some notes. We might as well get some benefit from what we're doing. We can just hear there's different types of hearing where we just hear it. It doesn't really gel. But if we start here with concentration with the mind, just like Suta Goswami heard from Shukadeva Goswami, it'll actually stick. And all the reading we do from that point onwards will be so much easier. It takes a bit of effort, but it's worth it. We put so much effort into material life. You know, I'm sure we can put that effort into spiritual life. Okay, so we can join again next week on Thursday.
Thank you, Maharaj.
I have a quick question.
Okay.
Originally, Srimad Bhagavatam was spoken by Sukadeva Goswami in the Ganges, the bank of the Ganges, and Sutta Goswami, is that a separate meeting in Nanisarayan?
Yes, Sutta Goswami met Maharaj Parikshit on the banks of the Ganga.
Yeah.
Because Maharaj Parikshit had been cursed to die within 7 days. And so he spoke to him the Bhagavatam. In that audience, Sutta Goswami, he heard that Bhagavatam with rapt attention, and he could remember, he was Shrutida, he could remember. And therefore, the sages are now understanding this, performing the sacrifice for the age of Kali, so that, you know, to try and understand what's the best way to preach to people. So they've nominated Sutta Goswami as their speaker because he heard from Shukadeva Goswami. And they heard in the forest of Naimisharanya.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay. So we'll start.
Maharaj, how many chapters do we have to read for next week?
If you read 6, just to make
6.
sure.
Okay.
And okay. Thank you very much. We'll see you next week.
You. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you,
Maharaj.
Thank you.
Very well.
Hare Krishna.